get started. In case you want to know what session we're in, I know it said remote management, and some of you thought it's the advanced track. Some of you thought, okay, that means I'm going to access servers remotely, maybe even through the command line. That was the 8 o'clock session. You missed it. This is not that session. We're not talking about deep WordPress stuff. It's not even advanced WordPress stuff. It's business stuff. It's the business side of WordPress. And in case you want to know what remote management means, it actually means temporal coordination and conflict resolution in distributed and remote virtual teams. Are you in the right session? Okay, here's an easier way to talk about it, all right? We're going to talk about having success in distributed context. Distributed context can mean a lot of different things. If you ask someone else on your own team to do something, but you're not in the same room, that's a distributed context. If you pay someone on Elance or Odesk or Freelancer to build you a theme or a plugin, that's a remote context. If you hire and outsource work to people in another country, that's a remote context. But if you take your laptop from work to home, that's not a remote context. Right? So we're talking about different things. We're talking about when you take work and you distribute it, you share it across multiple people in multiple locations. How do you do that right? Okay? My name is Chris Lema. I'm a product guy. All right? So I've been designing and developing products, software solutions, typically in a SaaS orientation, so software as a service. Started literally in '94 when the web was just getting started. I've been doing it for 18 years. I've worked with staff in 19 different countries, 9 countries, 8 different industries, 5 startups. Right now I work in a corporate environment. I was the one guy who raised his hand earlier in one of the sessions. They said, who's corporate? I was the only guy who raised his hand. I help run a software company called Emphasis Software, and I have staff currently in 2 continents, 6 countries, 5 states in the US. I spend all my time remote. Other than traveling every now and then to a client or traveling out to visit some of my staff, everything is remote. So when you walk into my office, I have 3 27-inch screens, mostly to hold all the chat windows and the email clients and everything else to make sure that we're keeping everything on track. I have one favorite, obviously the reason I'm here and talking about it here. I love WordPress. And over the last several years, most of what I've been doing when it's not purely corporate at Emphasis, and even one of our core products at Emphasis now uses WordPress, is using WordPress as a platform. Because WordPress brings so much to the table that you can build products on top of WordPress, and they don't even have to be blog-oriented or even CMS-oriented products. That's me. I'm looking at the right deck. I am not looking at the right deck. One second, guys. Last night I added 3 slides, and I realized I just opened the open. I realized I was going to get into asking, what are all the problems with it, and I thought I should start by what are all the positives. When does it make sense to take some work and distribute it out? The first scenario is when there's a lot of money on the line. So for example, I work with a lot of startups, coaching a lot on the notion of building new products. And I was talking with a CEO, and he had gotten a quote for $1 million to build a product, and then he'd gotten another quote for $120,000 to build a product. And I came along and I said, I think you can build that product for $20,000 to $40,000. I said, there's no way. Our quotes are way bigger. Now, he happened to have been first in Cincinnati and then Atlanta, and most of the folks that were giving him quotes about building it from scratch. And of course, my quote was building it on top of WordPress. But his big hang-up was he'd seen WordPress, he'd seen the inside of WordPress. It has pages and posts and things like that. He's like, I don't see it. So while I was writing the strategy document, right, that's something only I could do. While I was writing the strategy document, I paid one of my friends in Mexico to write a plugin that just does custom theming of the admin site. You guys have, some of you who are advanced WordPress guys have done that before, right? There's 2 different ways that you can customize the admin. One is via its own theme and another is via a plugin. It's not super hard work, but I just wrote up some specs, gave it to one of my guys in Mexico and said, here, do this tonight while I'm working, or over the next 2 days while I'm working on the document. The project was a $40,000 project. If it's a $40,000 project, does it make sense to ask my friend in Mexico to do a proof of concept for $300?
Yes, yeah.
Absolutely it does. And does it make sense for me to do it because I know I can do it better? Not a chance. Just because I can do it better doesn't mean it's worth doing. I'm the only one that can write a strategy document. I'm the only one that has an understanding of this guy's business and how to build the product this way. And this helpful aid so that a CEO can visualize what I'm talking about is throwaway. But it's $300 a throwaway. $300 is nothing on a $40,000 job. And sometimes we get so stuck in the I can do it, so I should do it, and we've miscued. When there's a ton of money on the line, you got to think through how you strategically invest that money so that you get to focus on the things that only you can do, and others can do things that aren't that hard, but you can just push off. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Awesome. The next case, when you need experts. For about 13, 14 years, I had hit every single project on time. I delivered every single product on time. And some of you that are committed to delivering everything on time, you know that feeling on that first project where you realize, I've built a brand on delivering on time and I'm about to blow it because this project is so monstrous. I can't get it done. Either it's because you misstepped, or because you bit off too much you can handle, or because you just believed your own press. But somewhere you get to that point where you're like, holy crap, I just made a huge pitch. I told this startup company, they're fourth round companies, they're not really startup. They'd already raised $200 million, and we're working, and their board had brought me in, and I said, I will hire you 5 senior engineers in 30 days. And then I will build you a full functional prototype of your next-gen product in 30 more days. In 60 days, you can decide whether you write me the check for $750,000 or not. All I need is 60 days. 30 days to hire the team, 30 days to build the prototype. That's sweet, let's do it. I said, sweet, first 30 days, got the guys. We're done, no problem. They're all remote, didn't matter because I knew these guys, they were solid. We could work well together. We're going to build this entire infrastructure. It's eBay for used cars. It's going to be awesome. And we're at like day 20 and I realized we're not going to get this prototype done. And here I've pitched to my 5 guys. We got a job for basically 14 months on this thing for $750 grand. This is huge. They're doing billions of dollars of transactions on this platform for used cars. At one point, this used car thing used to be at dealer auctions. Those dealer auctions don't exist anymore because our product at OpenLane now does it all online. It's a fantastic industry. It's remarkable. It's interesting. And yet, here we are at day 20, and I'm like, we're not going to get it done. So I'm talking to my wife, who is the smarter one of the pair of us. And she's like, well, can't you outsource this to someone? Can't you bring some other help who actually knows what you're doing? Because we were writing brand new code that even we didn't understand what we were doing, right? It was MXML with Macromedia when they were just coming out with Flex. So you get this Flash, but engineers could program it rather than artists. It sounded like really cool, and we wanted to do it. None of us knew what we were doing. And you get in those spots, or maybe you don't. You're smarter than I am. But I found myself in a spot. And so what do? So my wife's asking me, aren't there some experts that know this MXML, this Flex, that you could call? And I'm like, yeah, of course. Why didn't I think of that? So we found 2 guys in Europe who actually knew everything about it. They'd been writing the books on it. We said, great. I hired them. It cost me $1,200. Does it make sense to spend $1,200 to secure a $750,000 job?
Yes.
They're the experts. Hire them. They wrote the code the first time. It looked better than anything we were going to do. We did the demo. I did the presentation to the board, and they were thrilled. They're like, here's the check, do the project. It was great. And we had a sample code of what should be written rather than what we were trying to do. Right? Another reason to outsource or to bring in external experts. Lastly, what if you live in the middle of nowhere? If you live in the middle of, which by definition none of you do if you live here in LA, but if you live in the middle of nowhere, or if you're working with a customer who lives in the middle of nowhere, then logically, right, for the CEO that I coached that was in Cincinnati, he just couldn't find people in Cincinnati, right? Or he could find 2 companies, but he needed like 25 to figure out which are the right ones. At that point, it makes sense to start looking around. All right? So, if you've had any experience, and how many of you have had some amount of experience trying to work with someone who is in a distributed context, not in your office, not someone that you control directly? Awesome, many of you. How many of you have said, this is the most delightful event I've ever experienced and I want to do it for the rest of my life? Okay, a couple of you, that's awesome, right? So I literally, I think the last time I worked in a context where everyone was sitting in the same room, I think it was 96. I've been working distributed forever, and I still have these questions, right? Is anyone actually getting any work done? I have a small group of guys, a core team that works with me at Emphasis. They're a SWAT team. They work really, really hard on stuff. And when I got there, I started implementing one of the strategies I have, which is we do an early morning call and we do a late evening call. We just check in, what's gone on, what's been accomplished. The late evening call makes sense, right? What did you do all day? The early morning call is kind of a trick call, right? Because they're like, well, we talked at 6. What are we going to talk about at 8? Like, well, whatever you did after 6. By definition, they start going, oh crap, I guess I got to work after 6. Yeah, that's how we run here, boys. Let's go. So we start doing these, double calls a day, and we start getting on. We're working through stuff. And about a year into it, we've really developed the right culture. We're performing well. And I start noticing some of these guys are staying up super late. I mean, I'm on the West Coast, they're on the East Coast, and they're up in what is like 3 a.m. their time. I'm like, God, I don't even think I'm giving them something serious to work on. Like, what is it that's keeping you up all night? So I ask, I'm like, hey, what are you on right now? And the chat is just really long to get back to. And then finally one of my guys is like, sorry, we're all playing Xbox Live. Crap. I can't tell when you're online if you're actually working for me or if you're playing games. It's one of the questions we have, right? Another. Don't press that button. Press this button. Another question we have. Am I wasting the money that I'm spending on this? How many of you actually have a contract with a company where you source work from them and you have a negotiated contract where you bring on staff to work with you? Any of you? A couple, not very many. Okay. So we have a contract with some folks that work for us in Mexico. And it's easier than setting up an entity in Mexico. We have an entity in Canada, but in Mexico we just work with an outsourced company. And one of the things I do is I negotiate in the contract up front that the first 2 weeks anyone works for us is free. We don't pay for the first 2 weeks of any new employee that we bring onto our projects. And for 2 weeks we vet the hell out of them. We give them the hardest projects, we give them the most weird projects, we give them things that they would never ever expect to ever do in their entire life, and we know they're going to fail, we just want to know how they fail. We want to know how fast they fail, how quickly they raise up questions. We want to know if these are the kind of people that we can go to the wall with over the long haul, or if they're just going to hide. Because if they hide, we don't want to work with them. Because in the long run, we're going to be wasting our money. Because they'll go days and weeks and months without telling us that they're having a problem. We would rather know that people are intrinsically in that place. And even if you're just hiring your own staff and you're hiring remote staff, you want to know that the staff that you're hiring are people who, when they get stuck, bubble it up fast. Not, well, let me just try something else, let me just try something else. Because you may have the answer. It may take you 10 minutes to resolve the issue. But if they haven't told you for 2 weeks, you've burnt money. Does that make sense?
It's a good question.
It's a fantastic question. The pregnant woman with a glass of wine and a cigarette made the question even more strategic, but I don't know where she went.
She had a heart attack.
She's in the hospital right now. Yeah, so serves us. Yeah, just took her straight. The question when you're working with your staff is, if I'm not right there, are they making the right call? If I'm not sitting right next to them, are they making the choices I would want to make? Right? And we'll go back to the pulse calls I have where I'm constantly checking the pulse of my team. I'm talking to them, asking them questions over and over. The reason I do that, the reason I'm in their heads so much, we're talking so often every day, is because eventually they get to the place where they can ask themselves the questions Chris would ask them without Chris ever having to ask them. Then they can start talking to each other like, well, what Chris would want us to do is this. And I can go away on vacation. Right? But I have to first develop a culture where I'm asking those questions over and over until it becomes part of the core culture. We have a phrase in our organization called done done. Literally, when I came to Emphasis 6.5 years ago, they had never heard of done done. Now, the entire company, even in professional services and sales, they all use the phrase done, done. Because the reason I use done, done is because normally what happens is you say, is it done? And someone says, yes, it's done. And I bet none of this happens with the people that you work with. They say, yes, it's done. And then they start adding some other phrase after the first done, right? They're like, done except I still got to do this other thing. Or done except these guys still got to give me this content. Or done except I haven't tested it. Or done, done, but I'm also, there's always another phrase after the done. And so when I said, is it done, done? They're like, well, what's done, done? Done, done means there's no other words after done. It's just done, done. That's it. There's not. So now when I get a new guy on our team and we start talking on the phone, we have a daily call, and one of them said, I say, is it done? He's like, it's done, except I have to. I'm about to have a heart attack. One of my guys jumps in and goes, hey, Andrew, here's the thing. I used to be where you were, and I know what you're about to do, but don't do it. Seriously, don't do it. Chris is going to just tear you up. Here's the thing. Done, done means there's nothing else after the, and so he's, so I'm on instant message with him on the back channel, and I'm like, well done, buddy. You just thought I wouldn't be able to bring game today and tear him apart? He's like, no, I've seen that too many times. just not ready for that carnage. And I'm like, all right. Here's the deal. The choice is that your staff, or if you outsource, I'll take a plugin and I'll say, hey, I want this built. And I don't know that I'm going to release it to anything, but I want this concept built out, and so I'll source it to a group of guys, and then I'll just say, by the way this works, we're going to just have an email exchange or a phone call every day. Like, that's not how we work. We're going to write you a long document. I'm like, don't write me your document. I don't want your document. I want to see what you produce every single day. And we're going to look at it, and we're going to talk about it. And I just want to make sure that you start getting in your head how I work, and how we're going to deliver, and how it's going to go, so that I know that you're making good choices. And and when I ask if it's done, it's just done, right? Now my guys will say, either it's done, done, or they'll say, it's only one done, don't even talk to me yet. Okay, that works. And the last question. Just give it a sec, it'll resonate. At the end of the day, right? Do you want to take pictures? I'll get out of the way. that belongs on Twitter right there.
That's done, right?
Yeah. That's done.
Just beginning.
At the end of the day, you want to make sure that the code that is being written somewhere else is code that you're going to approve. It's code that you can take into production. It's actual work. You're paying for real work. I had a guy that worked for me. Now, he worked for someone who worked for me. And that guy was always working on something, and we were never seeing anything produced. And so finally I said, hey, to his boss, and I said to the director, I said, do me a favor, just go over to his desk, open up his IDE, where he writes his code, and just copy it, and send it to me in email. I just want to see the code he's written. He's been working on it for a week and a half, and I haven't seen anything. And I'm always getting the, oh, it's not compiling yet, but it will, or it compiled yesterday, but not today. I keep getting excuses. Just get the code, copy and paste, put it in email, send it to me, stand by the phone. I was like, that just seems like I'm in his shorts. I'm like, I don't care where you're in. Go to his computer, copy and paste, get me the code. I want to see what he's done. A week and a half, he hadn't written one line of code. Right? Hadn't written one line of code. Just because, and the truth was, it was remote. It was a remote context for me. But for his boss was in the same office. You can get screwed when you're local, or you can get screwed remotely. Right? There is nothing about a distributed context that leaves you more vulnerable or not. Bad people will hose you. And if bad people are going to hose you, you just have to have a way to catch it quickly. In this case, we were like, okay, you're done. Goodbye. It's your last day. He's like, no, give me another chance. I'm like, no. You just stole a week and a half of our money. You did absolutely nothing. Pack your bags and walk out the door. Right? I can't tell you that you won't get screwed. I can tell you this. Your odds aren't going to go higher simply because you're in a distributed context. Right? What you need to do is figure out how do you do a distributed context well. Oh, I kept doing that. All right. What we're really saying is this. It's just better. It's just better if we're all together. It feels better, it works better when we're all next to each other. We imagine pictures like this, where we're all together. This is what your office looks like, right? Hey, Sally, I think you should change this. Oh, thanks for that wonderful feedback. I think I will. Oh, and what you could also do is add this. Oh, that's perfect. I would do that. It's all wonderful. That's what we imagine. Is that what you experience in your office? Yeah, liar. Here's the problem, okay? If you are only committed to working in a local context, then you are only going to find the people and the skills that you can find in that local context. Sometimes it looks like this. And sometimes it looks like this. And either way, those might be perfect for you, in which case you're like, this is all good. Okay? But if it's not good, you're going to have to start thinking about something else. So what I want to do with the remainder of the time that we have is just walk through a couple things that will help you have some success in a remote context. All right? The first thing is, communicate like you were a schoolgirl and a schoolboy with a schoolgirl and schoolboy crush. Do you remember those calls? You just have hung up and you called back again. What are you doing now? No, you hang up. No, you hang up. Do you remember those conversations? Some of you had them. I know some of you are uber geeks and you've never had a girlfriend yet. But the rest of you know what I'm talking about. When it's your girlfriend, you're like, I'm going to talk to them all the time. I'm going to call them, I'm going to call them, I'm going to call them, I'm going to call them. When it's your employer, when it's someone doing remote work for you, you're like, no, I'm sure they're doing fine. Call them. Skype them. I love Google Hangouts now. This is awesome. I can actually see where they're working, right? Which is awesome because you can't always like tell them in advance we're going to have a Google Hangout, although you can schedule something. But it's awesome when I just hit, okay, let's have one. And my guy who's supposed to be in his office is suddenly in a cafe. Oh, hey, boss, what's up? No, I'm just getting a drink. I'll be back at my desk in a couple minutes. Yeah, no problem. I just have this question for you, right? Google Hangouts, just talk. Talk. Most of us, when we get scared that we're getting screwed, we start hiding. Don't hide, run into the challenge. Run into the challenge and have the hard conversations. The truth is, it's going to be one way or another. You're going to find people that you can work with in a remote context, or you're going to find people that you can't. Either way, getting to that decision point as fast as you can is the best thing you can do. So increase your communication, don't decrease it. The next thing, we love to talk about milestones. How many of you really love milestones in your organization? How many of you live for milestones? How many of you live for project plans? How many of you know what Microsoft Project is? Only a few of you, that's so sad. You know you will never get to, were any of you in Jake's talk, right? You won't get to big projects if you can't at least look like you know what's going on in a project plan. But here's the thing with project plans. They're driven around milestones, and milestones are big. And if you're going to work in a remote context, instead of milestone, go with inch pebble. Go with small. I have a daily call with my staff every single day. Every day of the week, of the year, we have a call. Sometimes those calls, with jokes, last 8 minutes. 5 of those minutes are the jokes. Sometimes those calls last 45 minutes. But we are on the phone every day. I have staff in Mexico, I have staff in Canada, staff in the US. We have to work out the time zone issue, but we all get on a call every day. And what happens is, over time, eventually, it's not even me always talking, right? Someone's like, I have this challenge, and before I can even answer, the other guy's like, oh, well, here's what we did over here. Let me give you access to that project so you can pull down sample code. You're like, that's awesome. But by bringing it down from big milestones where you let someone run off for 2.5 weeks without knowing what they're doing, to coming back every day. How many of you are using Git? How many of you are working in a concept? That's awesome. How many of you have set it up so that every time someone checks something in, an email gets out to the whole rest of the team that says, hey, guess what, so-and-so checked something in. Much less of you. Do you know what's really cool? Is when those emails go out to everyone else, because it creates automatic peer pressure. Like, oh, so-and-so checked in. So-and-so checked in. It's also great on the reverse, right? When someone breaks a bill, send an email out to the whole team. I don't want to be the only one who knows it. I want everyone to know it. Seth just broke the bill. That's an awesome email. Except for Seth. But you know what happens, right? When you start shrinking the change, when you start getting people to be accountable in all the little things, they become accountable in the big things. And that's the heart of the issue. You don't want someone to tell you, oh, when it comes game time, I'll play, but for now, just let me be free. You want them accountable in the little so they can be accountable for the big. Does that make sense? Leverage technology. The truth is, when I started working with people remote, it was painful. In 97, 98, I was recruited for a position in a startup where I would manage 100 staff in India. And this was 97, this is before a lot of people were doing remote work, and I thought, I gotta get on this thing because it's gonna be the next management thing, and it's gonna be on your resume, you're gonna need to know I've managed remote staff. And so they said, you're gonna go to India twice a year. I'm like, that's great, no problem, I got this. When I got hired, it was 120 staff, and it was go to India like every month and a half. It was a very different dynamic. And I had to go all the time, right? All the time I had to fly out and I had to sit in an office with folks a week or two at a time and then fly home and be home for 4 weeks and then go back. Managing folks then was really difficult. You had to physically be there just to start working through issues. Now, technology can do so much. We'll look through a list of different tools that I use all the time. But you just need to be in a place where you're getting comfortable. If you're one of those people who are like, yeah, I don't mind asking someone on Freelancer or Odesk or Elance or, you know, I don't mind asking someone remotely to actually do the technical stuff because I don't do technology, right? But then you can't communicate with them, right? You're setting yourself up for failure. Create check-ins. Create places where you can get on the phone with them or have them do, show the screen, right? For us, we have remote staff that work on code, but we're all part of one source code repository. I don't want them, you would never go through this. I know this is a newbie mistake only I've done, but we had a point where we had other people working on code, and then every now and then they would just email us the code. But all the time in between, they just kept the code to themselves, and we had no access to it, we couldn't see it, we didn't know it. And when we would do the calls to do demos, they just show us how it worked, we never saw the actual code. I know you would never be in that place, but we were in that place. And eventually I'm like, this is stupid. We just need to move off of like a Team Foundation server, a Microsoft, like a Visual Source Safe, but the next version that's all inside the firewall, protecting the enterprise. We just need to get out into the cloud. We need to have everybody from all the different places checking into one place so I can look at that code base, I can see who's checking in, how often they're checking in, what they're checking in, and look at the code all at any time I want. Get everybody in your source code. Use technology. Here's another rule. Okay? This is a default rule that we have on our team now. As you can imagine, all my team is guys. We had one gal who moved her into marketing just because this was a challenge. Just kidding. She wore shirts too. But with my team, right? This is what would happen. We started doing Google Hangouts. We started doing video calls, and I hit the call Seth, and so we'd set up the call, and it'd start ringing on his side, and he wouldn't answer. I'm like, chatting, what's going on? You're not going to answer? I see you're sitting at your desk. He's like, I got to go back and got to get a t-shirt and a hat. I'm like, are you sitting at the desk in your underwear? He's like, no, I got pajama bottoms on. I'm like, nobody wants that, right? Because they're working from home. They don't care. Now, at the end of the day, we have a new rule. I don't care if you're wearing pants, but I care that you're wearing a shirt. Right? So when we hire people, I tell them, look, you can wear whatever you want. I don't care if you wear pants. They're like, oh my God, this is a really crazy company. I'm like, but you have to wear a shirt. I'm like, okay, I don't get it. I'm like, no, because we do video chat. I want to make sure that you are seeing a shirt. All right? So it's a simple rule. I'm not saying that you have to implement it. You can go shirtless if you want. And what I want to end with is talking about some tools we use. Okay? Tools that are helpful. And by the way, this presentation will be online, so you don't have to write all these down. If you're that person, you can get it when I'll tweet out, and we'll make sure that WordCamp LA has the deck. But we use now Google Hangouts. Pre-Google Hangouts, we used Skype a little bit. I wasn't really a huge fan of Skype. I think part of the problem with Skype for me was when Skype was on, I started getting requests to have video calls with people I've never heard of in countries I've never been to. And I'm like, no, I don't want to talk with you. But with Google Hangouts, it was really easy to just say, okay, let's get a couple guys on. We also use at a corporate level Office 365, and so we use Link, and Link allows us to do online phone calls as well. But Google Hangouts is fantastic, absolutely fantastic. I'm coaching a startup up in San Francisco in Silicon Valley. They just got funded from Google Ventures. They're super excited, except they're trying to build product, and they need some help. They have a classic CEO who is a business CEO. They have a classic lead engineer who's remarkable and incredible. They don't always talk well together, and I'm kind of a marriage counselor for them. And so we meet on Google Hangout 2 times a week to just walk through how to get their product to market. Right? They have the money, they have great ideas, they got decent traction. How do we get product to market? And we're just on Google Chat. And even though the 2 of them are in the same city and often in the same office, just getting us to talk and see each other and walk through issues and say, show me this, demo this, share a screen, etc., allows us to keep moving forward. Now, we use Basecamp at Emphasis. It's where I work. I know there's a ton of people who hate Basecamp, and there's good reasons to hate it. I'm not saying that we love it and it's awesome, but there are some things about it that work for us, including an API that allows us to write code in and pull data out and do all sorts of other things with it. We're big fans of that. But Asana is up and coming. It's big. There's a lot of people that like it. You can check that out. If you're using absolutely nothing to track tasks, start. Because the easiest thing you can do is just make sure that people are delivering. I don't ever tell someone in advance what they have to deliver by when. So I'm not that kind of boss. I don't say, I need all this code done by Thursday, just go figure out a way to do it. I say, you tell me what you're going to do today. And at the end of the day, did you get done what you told me? Because what I'm looking for is personal responsibility. I'm looking for someone to own the code they write. I'm looking for someone that says, I said I was going to do this, and I got it done. I'm like, great. I can trust and work with those people. So I just want to know, are you getting your stuff done? And they set their bar and they move. Now, if they consistently set it too slow, where I'm like, not getting much done each day, we can have that conversation. That's a separate conversation. But what you want to do is register your tasks. Who's signing up for what task, at what time, when is it going to be done, and evaluate it and measure it. Instant Messenger, we use Instant Messenger all the time, literally all the time. I have a chat window from Google Talk. I have a chat window from Yammer. I have a chat window from, there's another one and I'm blanking.
Skype.
No, I don't have Skype open. I'm not a fan of Skype, but other people are. It's great. But I have another one, and then we have emails and all that. But using Instant Messenger allows us to do 2 things. Number 1, it's an easy way to communicate back and forth. But there's a second thing. How many of you are on phone calls with clients? How many of you have someone else, like an engineer, on your phone call with a client, and they're going to potentially answer a question, and you think that maybe they're going to answer it wrong? A chat message to them before they answer the question is extremely valuable. Right? So the customer says, well, how long is this going to take? And I have some guys who are fast, and they're going to be like, it's an hour and a half. I plan to charge 10 hours, so I'm like, it's going to take 10 hours. Right? These are not the droids you're looking for. And then the guy turns around and says, I have you about 10 hours. I'm like, that's right. He's like, why 10 hours? I can do it in an hour. I'm like, did you think about this? Did you evaluate this? Did you realize you're going to have these calls and conversations first? We're getting paid for all of that. Oh, yeah, you're right. Then it'll be about 10 hours. Right? So Instant Message also gives you a back channel to voice calls that you're having. Okay? And lastly, Jing and Snagit. Right? Oftentimes, in order to communicate with someone who's remote from you, you can't say, just look at my screen, look at what I'm doing here. So we record. Jing, if you've ever used Jing, lets you create 5-minute video, max. It's awesome. It really focuses what you're trying to do. So we'll do a screen capture of a 5-minute thing. You just go, here, I'm doing this, that, this is what I wanted to do. Boom, send the video to the guy, and the guy's like, oh, I get it. Okay, now I'll go do it. People are visual learners, right? So if you can demo what you want done in Jing and send it off, it's awesome. Snagit lets you do the same thing, except longer, and it has a price tag. And one last thing as I go. If there's one thing I want you to take away with in terms of how to do remote managing well, it's this. Your job is to be the chief storyteller. Your job is to be the one who keeps repeating, this is the end game, this is the goal, this is what we're going after. You have to keep talking about, if you're building a product for customers, you have to keep talking about that customer pain. Because as you're talking about that customer pain, your engineers are going, oh, I get it. See, the truth is there's going to be 100 decisions that an engineer is going to make. You are not going to write up all 100 decision points. You will not write that up. You can't write it up. You don't even know that there's 100 decision points to make. The only way they're going to make that decision well is if you keep telling the story. This is the pain we're trying to solve. This is the pain we're trying to solve. Or this is the context of what the customer is dealing with. Or this is the product we're trying to go after. Or this is where the real value is and why they pay us. You keep telling that story over and over again until they internalize it. That will help them make the decisions they want. And that's whether it's your own staff or whether you're asking someone remotely to build you a plugin or a theme or anything else. If you're asking someone remotely to build a theme and you haven't told them the main story over and over again, they'll build you a theme. You come back, you're like, oh, but this doesn't fit all of what we're dealing with. That's on you. Your job is to be the storyteller. Does that make sense? All right, one thing I may not have mentioned before, I did write a book on virtual teams. If you go to Amazon.com and if you just search for virtual teams, I think my book is second. It's called Building and Managing Virtual Teams, 5 Ways to Create a High-Performance Culture for Remote Workers. It's $7.75, but here's the thing. If you have a Kindle device, you can rent it or borrow it or whatever for free. That's good news. Just look up virtual teams at Amazon.com. And lastly, again, I'm Chris Summa. If you mention virtual teams and Chris Summa in a tweet, I may be giving away a free book. Thank you very much. I think we have about 2 minutes for questions. Any questions? Yeah.
Yeah, so let's say we don't have the same, I'm a startup company and we don't have the same type of connections that you may have when we're developing a PHP site. What's the best way to outsource your work? There's not a lot of capital and you don't want to use something like Elance and obviously you don't want to Google best programmer.
Right. You want to post something on every discussion board that you can that says, hi, I'm a great business guy with a great business idea, but I need a programmer who's like really cool, but I have no money and can you help me? And see how many people reply to that. That would be awesome. The truth is, at the end of the day, 2 things I know to be true. Unless you are finding people in a startup that are committed to what you're doing, they're not going to work for free. So often we talk about rent and lottery tickets in the startup world, right? You pay them just enough to cover their rent, and then you give them options, and that's their lottery ticket, most of which are defunct. I could wallpaper my house with options. But you have to find people who have a common mission with you in that scenario to get them on board for virtually nothing. If not, you have to do a couple things. You're going to have to develop relationships around you. And the other thing is I work with a lot of young folks. So I hire out of universities, kids that don't much, and I'm like, look, here's the trade. I'm willing to teach you things so I can jump you from a $40,000 job to an $80,000 job. I'm willing to invest in you that way. I need you to work hard for me at a low ticket price. But then you're guiding them. Now, if you don't have an internal technical resource who can actually do that coaching for you, that's going to be harder work. You need to find someone who can partner with you. And that is hard work. I mean, I do that for folks, right. And I get requests. I'd probably say no to 90% of the requests I get, right? Because if it's not interesting to me, I'm interested. Yeah.
Hey, I'm actually most curious about the prototyping part of your conversation. I'll admit I have high skepticism when I hear somebody tell me they can do a $750,000 prototype for $1,200.
No, that's not what happened though.
Okay.
Right? So what happened was it's a $750,000 job.
Yes.
The job requires essentially a whole bunch of screens that are doing core functionality. That core functionality is 3 or 4 user paths.
Right.
Those 3 or 4 user paths are the things we need to show proof of concept prototype of in a particular language. And if you draw, we did all the work of drawing them up, every path, every screen, everything. So then what we did was we gave someone can you take this and put it into frames in MXML for $1,200? The guy's like, I can do that. I don't have to think.
So you mean like more like wireframe or?
He actually produced, to that guy who was an expert in MXML, he could write the MXML faster than he could wireframe.
Okay.
So
but basically they're visual. They're not actual interactive prototypes.
Here's the thing. MXML, right, it's a specific thing, is XML that turns into Flash, so it was interactive. So for us, it was a huge one.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
In general, how much do you, I don't want to think at the time. I am curious about how you prototype very well. I find it very ineffective. I have a philosophy that says if you can't show something, customers don't understand, it's not done. Right? They say they do, but I find customers don't really understand the idea. It's not done. It either looks good or it doesn't. If it doesn't look good,
Totally agree. Totally agree. So I think we were in a particular context where I was saying, look, it took you 5 years and $10 million to build a product. We believe we can do it in a year. We believe this is what we're going to do. We can be able to do a prototype of it in the way we would suggest it in 30 days. So they were prepared for a 30-day rendering, not a 5-year product.
just a lot of expectations.
It's managing expectation, which obviously is a big deal. Yeah?
Question on how you visualize requirements, or using UML kind of thing. How are you doing that? Like, that seems like a real important step.
It is, and it goes to some of that prototyping or some of that interaction modeling that you go back and forth with. We don't use UML. Most of the people that we work with don't understand UML, whether it's the client base or even some of our engineers. So a lot of times we're just talking about really fast iterations. So someone, yeah.
If anyone's interested in the infinite WP, I'm going to do a demo right now on 111. Otherwise, we've got a 20-30 minute break, so we can keep talking and take questions.
Oh, no, you can go to break. Come to me afterward. We'll talk. Yeah, guys, I'm going to cut out so you have your break, but I'll be outside.